Hello and welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom. So, this is going to be part two of how to become a weapon. So, these are just my philosophies, ideas, opinions, so on and so forth, after gathering information and training from multiple areas, reading books, etc. So we left off with the first 10, so let's get into the next 10. Number 11, get rid of all ideology because it will be used against you, right? Because if people know this ideology or they know something of it, they will utilize it for whatever means, purposes, so on and so forth, right? And so it can either terrorize you, make you fear something, whatever the case, but they utilize it in order to maintain and keep control and power over the psychology of the individual or individuals that are underneath the ideology. Right. So if you want to become a weapon, understand and study a little bit, and then apply a little bit of what Bruce Lee teaches, right? Take what is useful and get rid of what is not, right? So obviously you write a rough draft in English class, and then as you perfect it, so on and so forth, before you turn in the final copy, you get rid of or tweak a couple things, and then it's genuinely yours. Right? So you have your own belief system, you have your own ideology of what is good, what is bad, what is evil, etc. And you put some critical thinking behind it, right? Number 12, be or have access to resources so that funds or assets can't be used against you. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you've ever been in business or purchased something, they would ask you, if you dealt with a salesperson, do you have, this product costs $10,000, $20,000, whatever. Do you have, the ability to pay right now? Do you have access to resources or something? Do you want to do layaway, credit, etc.? And then we could go over the options. Which one would you prefer? Or would you like to just, leave? Um, so think about it like that, right? Because in essence, if you don't have access to resources, right, they could say you're not being resourceful as much as they want, trying to utilize language from Tony Robbins or, people within that sector and field. But how do you know that's not a psychological ploy in order to get you to do something else, right? Oh, well, you weren't being resourceful enough, so on and so forth. No, but if you know, then you know, right? And as I said earlier, been there, done that. So then you must know. So don't give me that bullshit of you must have not been resourceful enough. Or people were actually keeping you at a certain pay grade, whatever the case, without doing the mathematics of exactly everything. And then they're wondering what's going on or what's wrong. Right? It's like dealing with a bad business person that doesn't understand taxes, and they're like, but we don't get it. How are they not paying taxes? How do they do this? How do they own nothing and they're extremely happy? Like, what's going on here? Only really wealthy people talk like that and understand it to a certain degree. So, number 12, be or have access to resources so that funds or assets can't be used against you. Remember, they put sanctions on a different country in Russia. Who's to say they can't do that to you and you live in the country that they have the ability to do that to? Right? And then, of course, they could seize everything because, well, people don't know how to hold a line. So they'll go ahead and just take stuff from you and they'll call it a lien just by jumbling up the letters a little bit. Um, it's like saying it's a lamb, not a ram, realizing that a lamb is a baby. Uh, think about it. Number 13. Always control and have knowledge of the location before going to a meeting so that you can reduce mistakes or mitigate risk, right? So if you know you're going to a location and a lot of things have been occurring, so on and so forth. Make sure you present as much information or receive as much information as possible before going to that place. Why? Because this mitigates and reduces risk. Even on the battlefield, it's the same way, just like in business. This is why you do a SWOT analysis, right? In the military, one of the ways they train you for something like a GWOT, which is a global war on terrorism, right, is they eliminate your fear mechanism. They show you what to do when that occurs, etc. And then people will utilize this to their advantage, not understanding what the hell it is that they're doing. And it's like, stop using fear, stop using fear, stop using, okay, fuck this, etc. And then they wonder what happened without asking questions for some reason. So ask the right questions and you might get the right answer. And as Lewis Lit in Suits says, if you're going into a courtroom, must understand the laws, as the law is a precise endeavor. And that means it's also based upon everything that is being said, not just what you heard. 14, one mind, any weapon. Now, we utilize this in the Marine Corps martial arts program, but there's other styles, right, that they talk about: one mind, any weapon, so on and so forth. But what does that mean? Well, you have one brain, right, two hemispheres, but you essentially are the weapon because you're the one that's going to have to take action in order to pick something up, in order to defend yourself, yada yada, whatever the case, right? So learn how to train your mind like a weapon, and you will be versatile in any endeavor to a certain point, unless it's new or there's multiple people that are partaking in something, right? So what do I mean by this? Okay, well, we used to joke around, obviously all the branches joke around and stuff, and we would say that we get the Army's hand-me-downs. We share a budget with the Navy and get whatever's left over, so on and so forth. So the expression work, do more with less, well, we have less money given to us because it goes to the Navy first, and then we get what's left over after they're done spending. And then the Army gets all the cool toys because they have a large budget, like the Air Force and Space Force. And we got to make sure things work, so we let them use it first, and then once we have proper procedures and everything has been laid out, because, well, they got the chance to play with the new toys first, we know that they work, so then we get to play with them, because technology is bound to fail whenever you go into a situation. So you want to mitigate certain things, including if you follow like different laws, like if something could go wrong, it'll absolutely go wrong, etc., right? So you want to mitigate that as much as possible. If you're in business, this would be known as, like, I think it's what is it? It's oh, what belt is it? They have a green belt and a black belt, Six Sigma, right? You want to mitigate as many errors as possible. That's just another analogy to get you to understand what I'm trying to state. Number 15, law enforcement will never ask questions. They are told just enough to accomplish whatever task is assigned to them. It is not their fault. They have families to feed, but don't let them stop you, especially if they are not in the know. Let's do a mic check. All right. So when it comes to law enforcement, yes, there's good cops. Yes, there's bad cops. There's good people. There's bad people. There's good people that do good things. There's good people that do bad things, and so on and so forth. And it goes on and on. But there's a expression that's widely said, and if you want to get somebody to do something, you tell them just enough to get them to do it, right? You have to present everything accordingly, because people's brains will sequence everything, put the puzzle pieces together on their own or whatever, but you'll be able to play with that a little bit. And depending on how high up you are, that also dictates how much training you got, so on and so forth. forth. So if you play this like a game of chess, you would tell your knight, I need you to move over here. The knight's not going to look back at the person, so on and so forth, or at the king and say, why do you want me to move there? Just fucking move there, right? And so it's very interesting, right? Because it's different levels of training. Now, in different areas of training, they also teach you how to push back, because sometimes people will get misconstrued, because over time, and it happens to a lot of people, when you get power or acquire finances or whatever, over a period of time, things start to tweak, and sometimes it can go to people's heads. So one of the things that I have enjoyed, especially just being when I was active, I was in charge of a section called truck checkers, right? So I used to think of myself, somebody used to joke around and be like, oh, that's Dumbledore. If he says don't go, you shall not pass, you are not getting past the gate. And some people laughed. They understood it was a joke, but it was also very true. And I had a couple people that were higher ranking, and they looked at me because I was of a lower rank, even with other people of above me, so on and so forth, that I led. And I trained them to ask critical questions, as well as to read a lot. I have a mentee. She can tell you that I had her read a bunch of books and laws, and then I showed her how to maneuver through everything, right? Because they expect you not to break the rules after showing you how to break the rules, right? So you should know better. So think about it like that. But over time, obviously things get misconstrued. So the first time, I'm pretty sure, it was a staff sergeant or a gunny. He was from a different branch of service, and he just kept trying to pull rank, and I was just like, I don't think you're getting it. So I'm going to go find somebody who you think is not going to say the same thing. I'll be right back. And I would either go get my master guns or Gunny Sowash or somebody, and they'd be like, yeah, no, he's not lying. You can't get through unless you unfuck yourself or whatever. And so it would balance everything out, because now what they're going to say, you have two people saying the same thing, right? Once people came to the ammunition supply point enough times, they knew who I was, so on and so forth. And then, of course, the people who didn't, obviously, would try something. Like an officer who was walking in, let's say this body armor bottle was a 20 millimeter mortar round, and at the bottom, as you can see, there's an indentation, right? If you saw this on something, it would mean that the primer is struck, right? And so he's walking in with like it's a baby, and I'm like, sir, I need you to stop right there. I don't know if you know what you're doing, but do you know what that is? And he's like, yeah, I found it on the side of the road, blah, blah, blah. I was told that I'm supposed to bring it here and you guys take care of it. No, sir, you stay right there. You're holding a round that is cooking off. Wait right there. No, 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 no. You listen here. You're this, blah, blah, blah. I'm an officer. This is a direct order. See, here's the thing. You don't know this, but that thing could literally detonate whenever. So I don't care how badly you want to pull rank, you're endangering someone's life. And if you don't understand how this works here, I'll be right back. So I went and got my master guns, and I was like, you will not believe what the hell just happened. And he's like, what's up? I said, I got a butter bar lieutenant holding a 20 millimeter round. Primer struck. It's cooking off. He found it on the side of the road, and he also pulled rank on me and told me that I had to take it from him because he was told that it's supposed to get returned to the ASP. He's like, you got to be effing kidding me. I was like, nope. So we both went outside, and he literally goes, sir, at the time I just finished, I think I got ninja punched, but whatever. He's like, whatever my corporal here said, he wasn't lying. Wherever you found that, you need to go back and place it down gently. Something you don't understand is we don't take ammunition, especially live ammunition, into the ASP because it can go off and have a larger explosion and take out everything. That can go off wherever, so you're going to need to place it back and call EOD to come out and assist you. Don't ever do that again. And he goes, I'm the master guns of the ASP. If you want, I could call battalion. We can get the colonel on the phone. It'll be perfectly fine. Do you not understand what I'm saying to you? And he's like, yeah, Master Guns, thank you, etc. Gave me a dirty look, and I was just like, I told you, right? And so this is what I mean, right? Because not everybody is not one trained the same way, because everybody has different jobs, right? You can't expect to go into a courtroom with different cases all the time and expect the judge to be an expert on every freaking thing that you put in front of him or her or whatever they're calling themselves, right? So think about that. So if you don't have your presentation, if you don't have your evidence, if you don't have other things, but you doctored a lot of stuff in order to have something happen because somebody wants to play a game of chess, right? And psychologically, right? So it's mental chess. So some people would say 5D, not 3D, because 3D would be in person, right? So you have to understand, one, what game they're playing. Two, have your evidence present. Three, understand that they have a job to do. They don't always go back to their superiors and ask those questions. And there's a small group of them that might actually either ask questions or listen to understand instead of listening to respond. So, it's one of those things that you just have to learn to deal with unless you're around your own people, etc. Because you guys, and when I say own people, because you guys train together, so you pick up what each other are saying, right? You pick up what I'm laying down, etc. is the expression. Number 16, people will be kind as long as you are useful to them. Once you are no longer useful or provide value, they will discard you and move on, like God did in the Bible with so many. So always provide value or have a way to be of service, as they say, right? Because what happened? Well, either one person dropped dead, okay, on to the next one, right? That's what Jay-Z says, right? On to the next one, right? That's what God did in the Bible, on to the next one, right? That's what people do in life, right? You break up, on to the next one, right? Some people a little bit slower or faster than others, but you understand what I'm saying. And then, of course, if you can't provide anything of value, right? Because I mean, if you, let's say, can't provide kindness genuinely, right? Then, of course, if somebody wants a family or doesn't want a family, can that be provided for, right? Both financially and can you actually fucking reproduce, right? And then take care of that, right? And then, of course, what's going to come from that. But you can't dictate the future, but you can look at pattern recognition or fabricate it to make people look a certain way or do certain things, right? So remember, always be useful, always be of value, but also acknowledge the fact there's nothing new under the sun, so you're going to have to be creative, right? I mentioned the Bible, and they say that the devil or Lucifer was in charge of this domain, right? He was, left responsible for Earth and all this other stuff, right? And then, of course, in Constantine, they talk about pushing. Well, pushing is psychological, right? So when you're watching the movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves and he talks about the battle between angels and demons, but they could only push, this was a psychological thing, right? So they can psychologically get you to do something or steer you in the right or wrong path, depending on how they're playing the game. Knowing when you shift it to that perspective, you understand that there are mind games that can be played, Manchurian Candidate, etc. And the list goes on, especially if you've seen a hypnosis show or the movie Now You See Me, Now You Don't, which is the third installment. So let's continue. 17, remain aware you are always being watched, whether you want to be or not. Right? It doesn't matter, and most military people understand this expression, it doesn't matter what you do when you know you're being watched. What matters is what you do when you're not, or you think you're not being watched, right? So what do you do behind closed doors, right? Etc. And if they use fear, right, and you're in the closet or whatever the case, or you have skeletons there, then they'll utilize that to, well, get you to do things, right? And this only works for but so long, right? So think about that, right? Because you're always being watched. If you went through life as though you were always being watched and listened to, right, then you should not fear stating a lot of things, which I said is which I'm pretty sure I said several times somewhere. Do not fear, right? I wonder why. Anyways, number 18. If family betrays you, then they are no longer family, right? So let's say you had a crew and you called yourself family, and then one person in the crew screwed everybody over. You keep giving them chances, right? So here's an example, because Fast and the Furious is out and people have been mentioning stuff like that. And we just had the international car show here. There was who was it, Vance or whatever, right? Whatever. He was the one that betrayed the crew, etc. And then he got kicked out. And then, of course, he did something else. And then Vin Diesel was like, I really wish I didn't see that. And he's like, no, you don't understand, blah, 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 blah. And then, obviously, Paul Walker, Han, everybody else found out there was a problem, right? But he still took care of his family. He just got excommunicado from the group. For good reason, right? Because he put the whole crew at risk, and he showed his hand of, well, treason, etc. Right? It's like in the movie Count of Monte Cristo, where they give him the option of joining the crew or whatever, and he goes, "Well, what happens if I don't want to do that?" and etc. He goes, "Well, we do this, this, and this, and whatever." And he goes, "Well, then I guess I'm gonna do that." So think about that, right? 19. If someone lies to you when you know the truth, they are never to be trusted with anything of value. Let me say that again one more time. If someone you lies to you, right? Someone you know, right, etc., lies to you, when you know the truth, then they are never to be trusted with anything of value. Now, how can I relate this to now, right? Because some people will jump in here as soon as, because they're listening to respond, not understand. If you swear an oath, or you go into a courtroom and they put you on the stand, you swear to tell the whole truth, so on and so forth, so help you God, etc. And everybody's in the know, right? Because you told your attorney the truth, right? So when you have questioning, you should know what to say, right? This is why people should check their BPMs and learn to listen to understand and not respond all the time, right? And so it's like, okay, the attorney's trying to help you out here, but you just keep digging a hole. So you're not to be trusted, because if you're going to lie on the stand, which is ironic because you're actually sitting, then, and say all this out loud, that's called committing perjury, allegedly, um, then I can't help you, and I don't think you should deserve X, Y, and Z, or whatever the case may be. Now, that sucks for some, but some people don't learn their lesson until this occurs. Some people call it maybe hitting rock bottom or whatever, right? But if you can't trust somebody, and they'll keep lying, you already know the truth, and then they still keep lying, and you're trying to help them out, etc. Then they keep lying. It's like, you know what? I tried so much, but you don't want to hear stuff. So whatever. I guess you're going to have to wait and see now, or hear somebody say, wait for it, so that you understand what to wait for, and maybe you shush a little bit and understand something, right? Last but not least, number 20. And I know we went over a couple, so before I get onto that, let's just touch on a couple things. 11, get rid of all ideology. It will be used against you. 12, be or have access to resources so that funds or assets can't be used against you. Always control and have knowledge of the location before meeting anywhere or doing anything. This reduces risk or mitigates it. One mind, any weapon. Train your mind, both psychologically and physically, obviously, right? Push through, get an extra repetition in, go 30 seconds or a minute longer on your run or your jog or whatever the case may be. Add 10 pounds when you go for a walk through the woods or whatever, right? I'm pretty sure you'll get stronger too. Anyways, 15, law enforcement never asks questions due to the fact of, well, training, right? Everything gets segmented. They are not supposed to know everything. They're expected to know certain aspects of the law. They're not attorneys or lawyers or whatever, or experts in certain fields outside of their profession, unless they chose to study outside of their profession. 16, people will be kind as long as you are useful to them. Once you are no longer useful or provide value, they will discard you and move on, like God did in the Bible with so many. 17, remain aware you are always being watched, whether you want to be or not. So mind your manners, your P's and Q's, etc., right? And it takes two letter P's and words that begin in there, but they're not the same, to make a baby. So yeah. If family betrays you, then they are no longer family. Remember the crew analogy, right? And then, of course, crew is a family, right? It's just different ways you talk to one another, right? Like a crew on a ship, right? So on and so forth, or a squad when they go out, right? If someone lies to you when you know the truth, they are never to be trusted with anything of value. Okay. And then last but not least, number 20, and I'll do the last couple afterwards, but number 20 is, if something happens more than once, it is a sign. Coincidences do not exist. Make sure to understand what is being said, because not everything can be stated out loud, right? But most people don't understand that, or they playing a game and they do understand that. They just want to know how much you know. So they'll use psychology to trigger emotions or whatever to get you to state something, right? This would be a tactic within linguistics, within psychology and sociology, and it's utilized not only both in business but in regular everyday life, in hospitals, in law enforcement, etc. So educate yourself. Now, this has been part 2 of how to be a weapon. Part 3 will come out a day or two from now, and that will be the final installment there. And then I'll see how everything goes, right? So, till next time, my friends, this has been another episode of Finding Freedom. I hope you find yours one day. Take care. Have a great day. Mwah.